Sophia stood alone in the quiet bridal suite, her fingers trembling slightly as they adjusted the delicate lace around her neckline. The mirror before her reflected a vision not of extravagance, but of memory and love. The ivory dress, though modest, was beautiful in its simplicity. Every stitch carried her mother's warmth, sewn with trembling hands in the final months of her life. To Sophia, it was more than a dress, it was a legacy. She twirled slowly, imagining her mother's voice telling her she looked like a princess. Tears welled in her eyes, but she wiped them away, smiling gently at the thought. Just then, the door creaked open. Ethan stepped in, his designer tuxedo sharp, his hair perfectly styled. She turned to him, hoping for a smile, for a gasp, for words of love. Instead, he stared blankly. And then, he chuckled. "That's your wedding dress," he said, almost in disbelief. Sophia's heart skipped. "Yes. My mom made it for me. Before she passed. It's—" "You can't be serious," he interrupted. "You're marrying a millionaire, and you're wearing a dress that looks like it came from a garage sale." She froze. The air thickened. "I thought you'd at least try to look like you belong here," he continued, his voice dripping with contempt. "You know, with actual class." She turned away, hiding the sting in her eyes. "It's not about money, Ethan. It's about meaning." "Well," he scoffed, walking out, "meaning doesn't photograph well." The door slammed. The silence returned, but now it was colder, heavier. Sophia stared at her reflection once more. The woman looking back was no longer hopeful. But under the pain, something else stirred, something fierce. It wasn't the end. It was the beginning, of something unexpected. That night, long after the bridal suite had emptied and the silence settled in, Sophia sat on the edge of her bed, still wearing the dress. Her fingers ran over the soft seams, each thread echoing her mother's voice. "You're worthy, darling. Always remember that." But Ethan's cruel words had cut deeper than any knife. It wasn't just about the dress, it was about everything. The man she had once adored, who had once surprised her with flowers and scribbled love notes, had been slowly disappearing. In his place now stood someone cold, proud, and obsessed with appearances. She began to recall all the small red flags she had brushed aside. The way he rolled his eyes when she talked about her charity work. The time he snapped at a waiter for pouring the wrong wine. How he subtly tried to shape her into the kind of woman who would fit in at high society galas, demanding she straighten her hair, change her wardrobe, and stop wearing her mother's necklace. Even at a recent family dinner, when Ethan's father made a tasteless joke about marrying down, Ethan didn't defend her. He laughed. Sophia had been so blinded by love, or maybe the idea of love, that she hadn't noticed the man she was marrying wasn't kind. He was polished, successful, and charming in public, but void of empathy behind closed doors. That night, as she finally changed out of the dress, she made a quiet vow to herself: "I won't walk into a lifetime of disrespect wearing a smile. Not for money. Not for anyone." Her mother had sewn her a dress, but had also raised a woman who knew her worth. And Sophia was about to remind the world of it, especially Ethan. The grand ballroom of the Langston estate shimmered under crystal chandeliers, every corner bursting with extravagance. White roses cascaded from towering golden vases, a string quartet played Vivaldi, and waiters in white gloves moved like shadows with silver trays of champagne. It was a wedding made for magazine covers. Ethan stood at the altar, exuding confidence in his custom-tailored suit, chatting casually with his groomsmen. Cameras flashed. Guests whispered admiringly about his wealth, his style, his family legacy. But behind their polite smiles, some noticed something missing: the bride's warmth. The love. The story. Ethan barely noticed. To him, this was a show. A performance. And he was the star. The music shifted. Heads turned. The giant double doors creaked open. And then, she appeared. Gasps rippled through the room. Sophia stood at the entrance, radiant. Not in diamonds or silk, but in the same dress Ethan had mocked, now transformed into something breathtaking. The simple lace had been carefully restructured, infused with grace and elegance. Her mother's original design still shone through, but now it carried subtle additions, touches of gold, hand-sewn embroidery, and delicate pearls from her grandmother's necklace. But the real beauty wasn't in the materials. It was in the message. The hem bore handwritten quotes from her mother, sewn in gold thread: "Love is respect. Love is truth." Inside the lining, hidden yet present, were photos stitched into silk, her as a child with her parents, proof of who she was and where she came from. Sophia walked slowly down the aisle, head high, eyes steady. Ethan's smirk faltered. His confidence cracked. She didn't look like someone trying to impress the elite. She looked like someone above all of it. Someone powerful. And he had no idea what was coming next. As Sophia reached the altar, the hush in the room was deafening. All eyes were on her, some wide with awe, others stunned into silence. Ethan stepped forward, attempting to recover his composure. He offered his hand, flashing his perfect smile, the one that charmed investors and silenced critics. But Sophia didn't take it. Instead, she turned to the crowd, her voice calm, clear, and unwavering. "Before we begin," she said, pausing to meet the gaze of every guest, "there's something I need to say." Whispers began. Ethan's smile wavered. "This dress," she continued, gently smoothing the fabric over her heart, "was the last gift my mother ever gave me. She sewed it with love, every stitch filled with hope that one day, I'd marry someone who saw me for who I am, not what I wear. Someone who respected my past and my values." Ethan's jaw tightened. "But yesterday," she said, turning toward him, "you mocked it. You mocked her. You mocked everything this dress stood for. Not out of concern, but out of embarrassment. You thought it wasn't good enough." She took a breath, then held up her left hand, and slowly slipped off the engagement ring. Gasps echoed like thunder through the room. "I won't marry someone who sees love as a transaction," she said, placing the ring in his palm. "Who wants a trophy wife, not a partner. This wedding may have been yours in design, but this moment is mine." Then she turned to the guests. "To everyone who came to celebrate love today, I hope you still do. Just not here." Her voice softened. "Instead, I donated every gift and refund from this wedding to a cause close to my heart, the Sophia Foundation, in memory of my mother. It'll help young girls believe they are enough, just as they are." Silence gave way to scattered applause. Then, roaring support. Ethan stood frozen, red-faced, humiliated. Sophia didn't flinch. She turned and walked away, still wearing the dress he said wasn't good enough. And somehow, she had never looked more powerful. The heavy doors of the ballroom closed behind Sophia, but she didn't look back. Outside, the golden light of late afternoon bathed the estate grounds in warmth, as if the world itself was celebrating her choice. For a moment, she stood still. The wind tugged gently at her dress, the hem swaying like waves. Her heart, though bruised, felt light, free. She hadn't just walked away from a man. She had walked toward herself. Behind her, voices swelled. Guests filtered out, some stunned, others inspired. A few stopped to shake her hand, some even hugged her. One elderly woman whispered through tears, "Your mother would be so proud." Sophia smiled through her own tears. "I think she is." Waiting by the curb was a modest silver sedan, not a limousine, not a Rolls. But behind the wheel sat Daniel, her childhood friend and quiet supporter. He had watched from a distance as Ethan swept her into a world of status and cold perfection, never once trying to compete, just hoping she'd one day remember who she really was. He stepped out and opened the door. "You okay?" Sophia looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. I am now. As the car pulled away from the estate, she glanced at the grand venue disappearing in the rearview mirror. No regrets. Just gratitude. Gratitude for the strength to choose dignity over diamonds, meaning over luxury. Her phone buzzed. A message. It was already trending online. Bride cancels millionaire wedding, turns it into a charity movement. She smiled. The Sophia Foundation had its first donors already. And as Daniel reached over to hold her hand, Sophia looked out the window, heart full. The world had seen her at her most vulnerable, and her most powerful. And this? This was the beginning of everything.